So thank you to all of you for being here so early. So today I will give our first finiteness result. Uh, so what this result will tell is that basically there are finitely many uh, groups up to isomorphism acting on space X, which is delta hyperbolic, entropy bounded by H, and with quotient less than D. Okay, so we have these our three most favorite numbers, delta, H, and D, and basically there are finitely many up to isomorphism groups acting on space this way. Okay, this is in some sense the goal of today. Okay, so in order to proceed, I will have to introduce some notion or some tools. Some of them are classical, and all of them are classical in some sense. And I start with a marked group. So it's a definition. So a marked group is gamma sigma, so a group with a finite set of generators, sigma 1, sigma k, sigma 1 minus 1, sigma k minus 1. So the set of generators has to be symmetric. And together with a marking map, which is a morphism, which I will call phi gamma sigma, going from the free group in K generator. Let's write this free group this way. So it's you take the standard presentation of the free group, okay, in K generators, and you send it to gamma according to the following rule. So EI plus minus 1 goes to sigma I plus minus 1, okay? Defines a morphism group, okay? And that is a marked group. It's, if you think of the lecture of Kenishi, he defined Teichmüller space exactly the same way as a set of marked Riemann surface, okay? So if you think a little bit, it's very parallel to what Kenishi explained. And so in particular, for such an object, in particular, the group is isomorphic to Fk quotiented by the kernel of this map. And this map, sometimes we call it the marking, okay? Okay, so this is so the definition has two parts. So definition of mark group, and the second part is when two mark groups are isomorphic. So we say that an isomorphism between two. So for short, I will write marking group just gamma sigma, okay? So between gamma sigma and gamma prime sigma prime is just an isomorphism between gamma and gamma prime with which sends the generators to generators, okay? So is an isomorphism say beta between gamma and gamma prime such that beta of sigma I equal sigma prime I, okay? In particular, this an isomorphism between marked groups send the marking of 1 to the marking of gamma sigma to the marking of gamma prime sigma prime. Namely, if you look at the marking map from gamma prime sigma prime, it will be beta, if beta is the isomorphism between gamma composed with phi gamma sigma. Okay? So take your time, look at this definition, and okay? And it's very, I mean, natural. So a remark which will be important is that if you have a marking isomorphism between two mark groups, if two mark groups are isomorphic, so now gamma sigma in all this talk will be a mark group. So if you have two mark groups which are isomorphic, then the Cayley graph of these two mark groups. Questions? Okay. So the two Cayley graph. So d sigma is a length associated to the set of generators, are isometric. So the isomorphism between marked group is something which behave well with respect to this distance, that we have put. Okay, so this is the first object we will consider. Okay. Any questions so far? At the moment, they are just definitions. Okay. So the second fact, which I will use, is the following proposition. It tells that when a group acts on a space with compact quotient, then the geometrical properties of the space translate into geometrical property of the group and vice versa. Okay, this is so, and I will state the particular instance of this of what I said. So I take xd, a delta hyperbolic space, and I think I have I don't need any further assumption, and a group gamma which acts properly on xd. So all these symbols mean always that the action is proper, and such that the diameter of the quotient is bounded above by some constant d. Then, for any x in X, then the set sigma, which is sigma 6d of X, remember the lecture of Gérard yesterday, so we introduced this, or maybe myself, I don't remember. So the set of gamma in gamma which moves X at distance less than 6d, then this set is a generating set of gamma, and so this set, so then sigma 6d of X generates gamma, and the group gamma with this system of generator is delta prime hyperbolic with delta prime equals some formula which depend of delta and d. It's not important what this constant is. What is important is that it depends on delta and e, and it's exactly the kind of statement I was mentioning. So one has a delta hyperbolic space, a group acting on X with compact quotient, then this delta hyperbolicity property of the space translates into a delta prime hyperbolicity property for the group, and there is a relation between all these quantity delta and delta prime. Okay? Okay. So let me just sketch, the idea of the idea of the proof of such a statement, it's not very complicated, but it's interesting. Any question? No question. Okay. So the idea is the following. So idea of proof. The idea. Yeah. Yes, but a free group, it's, yeah, right. So it would act, so the only possibility is to act on a tree, okay, okay. And you of course, in this case, this bound is not, wouldn't be optimal because you would get that you would lose something, but okay, we don't care about the fact that we lose some information. Okay, it's not sharp. Those estimates are not sharp, but okay. Of course, as you said, it's you would get that gamma is 8 hyperbolic, and in fact we know that it is 0 hyperbolic, but we don't care. Okay. So the idea of the proof is the following. So we will going to build a map between the Cayley graph and X. Just we choose. So I draw a picture. So here is the side of X, and here is the Cayley graph. So the Cayley graph has a neutral element as a vertex, and around it you have generators, sigma 1, sigma 2, sigma 1 minus 1, sigma 2 minus 1, okay, etc. And I will define a continuous map F between the Cayley graph of gamma into the space X in such a way. So we will send gamma. So you have chosen the base point X, and the construction won't be depending on this choice, but okay, I choose one, and I send gamma to gamma X. Okay? And now I want to extend in a natural way this map which is defined on the vertices of this graph. How? So I start to look at the generators. So there is an edge here between E and sigma 1, E and sigma 2, E and sigma 1 minus 1, etc. And then I look at the image of X by those generators. And I choose for all of them a geodesic, a minimizing geodesic. So here are the geodesic. Maybe there are several ones, but I don't care. I make a choice here. Okay. And then I send this segment which has length 1 by definition of the Cayley graph of a group. I send the segment E sigma I to X, the geodesic segment X sigma I of X. And of course, this distance is not 1, but I parameterize this map I define this map to be an homothétie between those two segments, okay? So it defines a map between the red picture to the yellow picture, and now I have to extend it in an equivariant way. So the group is acting on its Cayley graph, and it's also acting on X, and the map I will define will be equivariant under this action. And so if I take a point gamma here, which is, for example, related by an edge to gamma sigma, okay, then I will send this, so gamma X is somewhere. So I have already decided that gamma is sent to gamma X. So gamma X is somewhere, and and I send the segment gamma sigma to gamma of x, sigma 1 of x. So you see, this segment is the image by gamma of this red segment. Gamma takes this segment in the Cadet graph and send it to this segment. And then I do the same. I send this yellow segment, I send it to gamma sigma 1 or I of x, okay? So maybe I should put colors. So this is sent to this, okay? Okay, so here is the picture, okay? So gamma sends this to this, and here gamma sends this to this, and I make those pictures correspond by f. Okay, so this is the construction of f. Okay? Is it clear what f is how f has been defined? Okay, so and then the lemma is the following. The lemma says that this map is a quasi-isometry. What does it mean? It means that this map doesn't change the distance too much. It changes the distance up to a multiplicative constant and maybe an additive constant. That is the definition of quasi-isometry. And the precise statement, I won't prove anything, but I just let you all what I say in exercise. So when you have a map between two metric spaces, and you suppose that this x here, I should keep my notation. So I start from y, dy, and I go to x, dx, and I assume that the target is delta hyperbolic. Okay, and I assume also that what I said before, but in a more concrete way, so for any y prime in the source, the distance between their images is not too much distorted. So I will write it this way. It's larger than some constant a times d of f of y f. I should have said probably dy. Okay, dy of doesn't distort too much, and the constant is minus b delta. Okay, so what this says is that the distance between the images is not too small with respect to the distance between the sources. The second, so the two first properties says exactly that I am looking at a quasi-isometry. So let me just formulate in a way that you can do the exercise with the right constant. So for any, so this is a geodesic segment. Then the length, so I take on x, I take a geodesic segment between 2 points, and I take its image, and I assume that the length of the image of this geodesic segment is less than lambda, the distance in y between f of y, f of y prime, and maybe there is some constant I should add, which is c delta. Okay? So this means that if I have a geodesic segment in y, between y and y prime, c, let's say c, or yeah, c, geodesic segment, then its image has a length which is comparable, so it is sent to some curve. And the length of this curve is comparable to the distance between those 2 points, okay? With some multiplicative and additive constant, maybe, okay? And the third property I will need is that for any curve, for any curve C in X, satisfying the second property. What I mean is that I take a curve in X and I assume that the length, so satisfying this assumption means that for any S and T, the length of C of the segment ST. So I take S and T. I take a subinterval of 0A, and I look at the length of this piece of the curve, C of ST, and then it has to satisfy this inequality, namely it's less than lambda times the distance in X, between C of S and C of T, and maybe with this same error, delta of T, okay? Then, the conclusion is that so I have a map which is a quasi-isometry, so basically which satisfies this property, and the conclusion is that if this guy is delta hyperbolic, then this guy is delta prime hyperbolic, and it's exactly what I needed in this statement here, okay? So then, y dy is delta prime hyperbolic, and delta prime, I don't write the precise formula, I let you this, let's put it this way, delta second, and it depends on all the parameters I have written, so there is A, B, C, lambda, and delta, of course. Okay? So a quasi-isometry preserves the fact to be a delta isometric, and in fact the proof of this is really simple. Let me just draw a picture. So this guy is hyperbolic, and you want to show that this guy is hyperbolic. Therefore, you take a triangle in Y. So in Y, you take a triangle, Y0, Y1, Y2. You look at its image by F, so it gives rise to a kind of warped triangle. So the curve, F is not an isometry, so these curves are some curves, continuous curve. And then of course, you do what you want to do. So you look at the geodesic between the edges of this funny triangle. And then what you want to show is that any point U here is at some universal bounded distance of the union of the two other sides by definition of hyperbolicity. Okay, so you look at the image of f of u, it's some point here. Okay, so because of so I am realizing that I forgot to say something, but anyway, I say it now. So one of the consequences of this quasi-isometry statement is that so this tells you that this curve here, so the third property tells you that this curve is a quasi-geodesic, meaning that it is a curve which has this property that the distance between 2 points is comparable to the parameter. Okay? Therefore, the statement I forgot to say here is that in this case, then any point of this curve is at universal bounded distance of the geodesic between the extremity of this segment. Okay? So here you can find a point V which is within a bounded distance. Okay? So it's a consequence of this, and I should have written here. Okay? Now I know that the orange triangle is hyperbolic, so I can find a point V prime here, which is at a bounded distance. Okay? So here it's less than delta by definition. So this is bounded by some constant C1 of delta. And then this one, again, it is at bounded distance of this quasi-geodesic. And then I have another point U prime here, which is at distance, at bounded distance of V prime. And then by triangle inequality, here, you see that those 2 points, f of u and u prime, are at bounded distance. And again, by quasi-isometry, since the distances are almost preserved, it means that this u prime here is at bounded distance of this point. Okay, this is more or less the idea, and I let you in the details of this. But it's a very classical statement. You will find it in all textbook, and I wanted to put this in this particular way because it's now become very easy as an exercise. Okay. Yeah, so this is what I forgot to say. So what I forgot to mention. So if you have a curve which satisfies this, okay. So you see the length of this curve is certainly less than. So this is the assumption I put, and of course it is larger than the distance between x between C of S and C of T by. Because the length is just the distance is the shortest length of curves, okay? So this says that this is the definition of quasi-geodesic. A quasi-geodesic is a curve which has these properties that the length of any piece, of any subsegment, is comparable to the distance, okay? With some, and the lemma, which also is very classical, is that any quasi-geodesic stays within a uniform, in a delta hyperbolic space, stays within uniform distance to the geodesic segment between their extremities, and this uniform distance is quantified. It can be made explicit. Okay. Okay. So I need now another. Definition to go further. If you have questions, so please ask. Okay, so the next, can I erase this? Maybe not, okay. So now I want to speak a little bit about finitely presented groups. And here is the definition. So recall that when you have a marked group, gamma sigma, so it gives up a marking map. It comes with a marking map from the free group with K generator to gamma, which sends the generator of the free group to the generator of the group. Okay, so K is the cardinal of sigma, and gamma is isomorphic to the free group. Every finitely generated group, in fact, is a quotient of the free group. Okay? This subgroup, I mean, there is no reason why it should be finitely generated, and we say that gamma is finitely presented if there exists, let me just put it this way. Okay, so if there exists a generating set first, gamma, and let's say a finite number of elements R1, Rn in the free group Fk, such that the kernel of the marking map, gamma sigma, is generated as a normal subgroup. So I call it, I'll explain in a while. So it's generated by this finitely many element of the free group. So this means, so I don't claim that the kernel here is finitely generated group. I say that it is finitely generated as a normal subgroup, which means that you have finitely many guys here, such that the smallest normal subgroup of the free group which contains these elements is the kernel. Okay, so this is the normal subgroup generated by this element. Okay, typically an element of this group here is just a product of conjugates of one of these elements. Okay, this is what I mean. So it's very different of finitely generated. Okay, from finitely generated. Okay, so elements in this group are product, can be expressed as a finite product of a conjugate of this one, etc. You choose a list of guys here, and you make the product of conjugate. Okay? All right. And of course, not all finitely generated groups are finitely presented. There are many examples of groups which are finitely generated but not finitely presented. Okay. Did I say something? Okay. So definition is finitely generated if so okay. So this is I didn't forget anything here. So let me just give some examples. So you know certainly example of finitely presented group. For example, Z2, the abelian group in two generators, is I should say here that in this situation we sum up all this information saying that gamma is equal to the set of generators sigma I. Okay, so you list the collection of generators and the collection of relations. So it's a short way to say all what I said here. Okay, gamma is a group generated by sigma I with these relations. Okay, so with this formulation, Z2 is generated by two guys, A and B, and the relation is A, B, A minus 1, B minus 1, okay? Another example, which you know, the fundamental group of a surface of genus G is generated by G generator, a 2G generator, A1B1, AG, BG, with a relation which is that the product of the commutator is 0, okay? And then, so let's do this as an exercise. Okay, and okay, so now I need some notation to proceed further. So if I consider the free group in P generator, so I will call SP the standard set of generator, E1, EP. Okay, so this is canonical, so to speak, set of generators of FP, which means that I have given a concrete incarnation of FP. And then I will denote by BP3 the set of all elements in the free group at distance of neutral element equal to 2 and 3, or 3. Okay? So I am looking at a subset of the ball in the free group of radius 3, and I take just element. You could think that it is just the ball of radius 3. It's not very important, but okay. And so the next proposition is a theorem which is stated in our most favorite book of Payatanas. So it's in the book of Cornart, Delzan, Papadopoulos. And it says that, as I said, all finitely generated groups are are not finitely presented, but it's the case for hyperbolic group. And there is a quantitative way to formulate that delta hyperbolic group are finitely presented, and it is the following proposition. So gamma sigma is a delta hyperbolic group, market group, then, so a priori, if I write a group like this, maybe okay, so I don't know if it is finitely presented or not, but what I'm going to tell you now is that if I increase a little bit the set sigma, so if I take more element, a little bit more elements than the one which lie in sigma, then I will get to a finite presentation of the group gamma. So I let denote S sigma to be the set of gamma in gamma, such that the distance between gamma, with respect to the distance sigma between E and gamma, is less than 4 delta plus 2. So okay. So of course this set contains sigma, so it still generates the group, and it's slightly larger. Okay, it takes a little bit more elements than the ones I had. Okay. Okay. So the statement is the following. So this is a generating set. So this is a generating set, and if I call P the cardinal of this set, so I come up with phi, which is phi gamma S sigma, the marking map from Fp to gamma. Okay, so I have a set of generators, so I look at some marking of gamma, so some morphism between Fp and gamma, and I call R of gamma sigma to be the kernel of phi intersection with this ball of radius. Okay, let me say the ball of radius 3, even if it's, I don't remember where I put this definition, but okay, so this is okay, let's think that it is a ball of radius 3 in the free group, okay? So this set is finite, okay? And the claim is that this generates, this is a set of relation of this group, and I write it now. So then, the kernel of this presentation of the group is exactly the kernel intersection with okay, sorry, I have already put, okay. So then gamma is isomorphic to the free group, quotiented by the normal subgroup generated by R gamma sigma, which is finite, okay? So in other words, gamma with this set of generator S sigma is finitely presented, and I even know more. I know that the relation has length at most 3. Okay? Okay, so I think I am a bit slow. So maybe I will skip the proof. Terrible. Sorry? Where are you? Here.
How much more do you really need? So this is enough. This is
Yeah.
But how much do you really need?
This I don't know, but okay, so the good news, okay, what is important for what follows is that the cardinal of this set is controlled, not only finite, but it is controlled by the cardinal of sigma. Okay? Because if the cardinal of sigma is k, then this ball, you know at most that it has a certain number of elements which is less than what it would be in the free group. And so the main information I will use later is that the cardinal of this set is less than the cardinal function of the cardinal of sigma, and I don't need more. But of course, it would be interesting to as you ask, it would be interesting to say that I need, in fact, a certain number minimal, and this I don't know. Okay. Right, exactly. So I don't want. Okay, so the proof is so I refer to the book of Cornart, Delzan, Papadopoulos. So it's written, and the idea is to construct. So there is a beautiful object associated to a finitely generated group, which is the RIP complex, and the RIP complex is a kind of simplicial complex, a little bit analogous to the complex of curves that Kenichi was discussing, but in another context. And so you, from a finitely generated group, you build a complex, which is a RIP complex, which is a simplicial complex, and what you show is that this complex is contractible with compact quotient, and then you have what you want, and the three come from the fact that the relation can be reduced to triangles of this simplicial complex. But so I have no time to say it now. But if you are interested, I mean, this is very well explained in the book, so I refer you to the book. Okay. So now I can go further to what I wanted. So I promise that I can show you that there are finitely many groups up to the isomorphism acting in a certain way. So before proceeding, let me just make a reminder of the last lectures. And the reminder is the following. So it's a statement that we showed, actually. So XD is a delta hyperbolic space, non-elementary, so not a circle, not R, and gamma, not elementary, means different of R, and gamma is a proper action on X. I don't write proper, it's automatic. And and I assume, as usual, that the diameter of the quotient is less than D, and that the entropy of X is less than H. And the conclusion is that there exists, remember, under this assumption, there exists a point where the systole is large. So it's okay. So there exists a point, at least one point, where the systole of the action of gamma at x0 is larger than some constant, which I won't recall, but which is a constant depending on delta H and D. And it means that in X, you can find a point where, if you look at the ball of radius epsilon 0, you just see, and you look at the orbit of this point, then the ball of radius epsilon 0 just see one point of the orbit. So you take a point X and you have this orbit. Okay? And what I'm saying here is that if you look at the ball of radius epsilon 0 around x0, then the orbit contains only the image of x0 by identity. Okay? This is what the geometric meaning of this systole. And now the theorem is the following. The next theorem is the following. So I give to me my three favorite numbers, and XD, as usual, non-elementary, and I will need a geodesically complete meaning that the geodesic can be continued, extended, as Gerard said yesterday. Geodesy complete, non-elementary, I have to forget nothing. So Boozman space, Boozman and delta hyperbolic, of course. Okay, so you have such a space, and gamma acting on X, as usual, with diameter less than D and entropy less than H. I think I didn't forget anything. Then there exists a point at which this set generate gamma and as cardinal less than a number which is n0 of delta H and D. Okay, so what I'm saying now is that, and it is one. Okay, it is one of the. I don't want to write now this constant. Okay, so what I'm saying here is that for any group action, which of the kind of which I like, compact quotient, entropy bounded above, and the space is Boozman, all this nice geometric property and delta hyperbolic. Then I can find a set of generator which has bounded number of elements, uniformly bounded. So this depends only on the geometric constraint of the space on which gamma acts. So it's why this setting is interesting. And the proof is completely it's a trivial consequence of the Bishop-Gromov that we stated. So the proof is the following. So take x0 as here, okay, and look at sigma 6d x0, and look at this cardinal, and I claim that this cardinal is also the cardinal of its cardinal divided by the cardinal with respect to this epsilon 0 coming from this theorem. This is the remark I have done here, because this number is 1. Okay, so the number of elements of this set is equal to the number of elements of this set divided by 1, and 1 is just the number of elements of the orbit in the ball of radius epsilon 0 by definition of this also. Through this assumption, the group acts on such a space. Then we know that there exists some epsilon 0 depending only on the geometric constraints, such that this ball contains only one element, and therefore so the cardinal of sigma 6d of x0 equals this quotient, and this we know how to estimate. It is a Bishop-Gromov quotient. Okay, and so it is less than. So here is Bishop-Gromov. And this constant is completely explicit, but I don't want to write it again. Okay, you have it in principle on your notes. Okay. Okay, so now I can finish. I have how much time do I have now? 10 minutes. Okay, so it's perfect. So any question so far? So the main content of this theorem is that, okay, you have a group which acts on a nice space, then you can find such a generating set with bounded number of elements, okay? Okay, so now we are ready to formulate this finiteness theorem I was talking about at the beginning of this lecture. So we start with delta HD, positive numbers, and I denote H of delta HD to be the set, okay, so the set of torsion-free groups, torsion-free gamma, which admit a proper action on a nice space XD, which is delta hyperbolic, Boozman, and I don't want to, and such that, okay, Boozman, and such that the diameter less than D, and the entropy less than H. And I consider the isomorphic classes of this set of groups. So I don't want to distinguish two such groups which would be isomorphic. And the theorem is that H of delta HD contains less than, okay, so since I was not very precise on the constant I wrote before, so I have the N0, so I can so I can write the constant because it's okay, so it's somehow interesting. So M0 is a number, so which gives an upper bound of this number of class of group, and this number is the sum P varying between 3 and N0, which I have to define, of 2 to 4P2 P minus 1 element, and N0, where N0 is 2 little N0, the little N0 is the one I just erased, which was here. Okay, 2 little N0 times N0 minus 1 to some power which depend on delta. So this is the integer part, and N0 is the N0 of the preceding theorem. Okay, so this is the theorem I wanted to state. Okay, and the proof is the following. So it's we have done everything necessary to tell this very simply. So I take the x0 in X such that the cardinal of sigma 6d at x0 is less than n0. Okay. Then I know that by one of the theorem of the beginning of the lecture, I know that gamma with respect to this set of generator is delta prime hyperbolic with delta prime equal 10 delta over d plus 8. Okay, and at the end, gamma sigma 6d of x0 is then a marked, so it is then a marked group in 6D, I mean, it's a marked group, and I have proved that the number of such, and I prove that the cardinal of the set of marked group. So delta gamma sigma 6D x0, which are delta prime hyperbolic, and such that the cardinal of sigma 6D is less than a number, so here it's n0, then this is bounded by some quantity, which is our m0. Okay? And that's it. Okay? So are there any questions so far? And I would like to make some comment on this. Okay, so it's just a consequence of what we have done before, right. So if you don't like the way it is formulated, so I said that there are finitely many classes of isomorphism classes of group acting on blah 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 blah. You could restrict to a particular case, and what this theorem says in particular is that, okay, look at the set of closed manifold. You could restrict to manifold, closed manifold with a distance on it, such that the universal cover is delta hyperbolic, Boozman and entropy bounded below and diameter of the quotient bounded. Then there are finitely many isomorphism class of fundamental group. So if you prefer to think of manifold, which I could understand, then this statement says that there are finitely many up to isomorphism possible fundamental group of closed manifold with certain geometric property, which are entropy of the universal cover bounded, diameter bounded, and delta hyperbolic, the universal cover delta hyperbolic. You can bound the number of this fundamental group by three numbers, D, delta, and H. This is the content of this theorem. Okay? Yeah. Yes, it's a very good question. So we have no assumption on dimension, but the dimension is hidden somewhere in this assumption. And if you think we don't need to assume something on dimension, it's a consequence of what we say. And if you think of, for example, a hyperbolic space, so the entropy of the hyperbolic space of dimension n is n minus 1. And so when the dimension goes to infinity, the entropy grows. And so somehow this statement, this assumption contains the dimension. Okay, the point is that you don't need to, but it's a good point. Yeah. Any further question? I can discuss if I'm with you. Okay, so I stop here.